Hello, hello. All right, today we're going to go into testing your AI applications and bots, talk a little bit about process, steps, kinds of tests, and so forth. So, if you're going to be testing your AI system, so this could be an application that you have on the internet that is a chatbot. So, you've got a person who's going to talk to your bot, and you want to make sure that the bot responses that come back are great. You're testing for quality. But it could also be that you're testing two AI systems that are working with each other. And this person here could be a customer, but it could also be instead, it could be someone internal, like within your organization. You could have an internal AI conversation system for knowledge lookup or to generate custom engineering quotes or whatever it might be that you're using this AI system for. So it's in all of those three different permutations. Okay, so the kinds of people you need on your team in order to really make this work is I think one person that's really important is your product owner, right? This person is going to be the person who knows if it's generally doing the right thing, if it's helpful, if the conversations are going the right way, and so forth. And then you're going to need someone who is building it. Now, it depends if you have a low code or code-based system. So it could be a developer, but this developer could be very technical or not, right? Depending. And these two people are pretty important. And that could be all you have on the team. Maybe you have a project manager, but I think those are, the project manager could be your product owner as well, depending. I think at a minimum, that's the two people that we're talking about. So the developer is going to be the person who's really building and fixing. And the product owner is going to be the one who's essentially evaluating, right, the AI system. And so, then the question is who's going to be doing your test writing. So not just the testing, but also the writing of it, the creation of the tests. And if they're not creating the tests, evaluating if they're good tests. This could be, again, the same person, but you might also have a test manager here, right, who's just thinking about additional kinds of tests that you may want to be running. Depends on how sophisticated your team is. But I would say two people minimum, three potentially, aside from like marketing and visual work or whatever it might either be, but that goes beyond. Okay, so in terms of the kinds of tests that you're going to run, I already wrote here on the right here side of the screen all the different kind of areas of testing that we can think of. These are the areas you want to validate. I also wrote little M's here next to the things that require multi-turn or multi-steps in the conversation. So what is meant by a goal? And I distinguish between customer or user goals and the business goals is you're going to have, some kind of a table here, and you might have a goal. The customer's trying to, buy a product, right? Oops, my Y is weird. And then the business goal is that you also buy the product, right? So these are kind of like matching goals. But sometimes the customer, might want to do something that's not possible. Let's say they want to get a refund for something that's 2 years old and the term is only 1 year for the refund. And so they're trying to get this goal achieved. You're trying to gracefully find a way to tell the client that they can't get a refund. You might have some other things you need to test for then, like is the customer upset? Do you need to escalate? Do you have other, what's your process around an unhappy customer? But if the customer goal, if success is that the customer goal fails that story, that experience, then, what is the business goal here? Is the business goal still a success in that kind of a mapping? All right, I won't go more into that, but essentially you have to think about those two sides, right? Both the business and the customer or user goals, because they're not always the same. Things like helpful, useful, as well as customer satisfaction and to a degree process adherence, these kind of all tie together. So you're going to be, I wrote also an L for log over here on the right. So if you're looking for customer satisfaction, you're going to want to be reviewing the log of real conversations to see what was the person's experience? Did they get frustrated? Did they get annoyed? Was the AI short? Did the AI refer them to contact support for more information right away, or did it continue to engage with the person appropriately, give the right information? Helpful and useful. This is also something that could be qualitative. It's did you get the right information? Process adherence would be, for example, did the bot escalate correctly when it was supposed to? For example, right? Do you have processes, and is your bot following those processes? Hallucinations, guardrails, liability. These are all very related. So here we're checking if the bot stays on topic, if it makes things up within the topic that it's not supposed to. So it's not referring to real documentation. It's using its training knowledge to guess. Also, AI systems are essentially random slot machines. So are you controlling the slot machine sufficiently that you're getting the output that is supposed to be that is supposed to be acceptable? And then for liability risks, you're going to be wanting to load in or consider things like your contract agreements, your terms and conditions, anything that has to do or indemnification risks. So you want to make sure that you're also looking at those documents, those terms that you have, and that the bot is very aware of what they are. And for guardrails, this could be making sure that you're not going off topic. And so, there's two parts to it. There's testing for this, and then there's the actual fixes that the developer needs to do, right? So we're trying to focus a lot on the testing part, because if you're testing for it, you know that there's a problem, and then you can presumably find a way to fix it. Fixing it's going to go way too deep in this video, so we'll do that another time. Personality, you're going to want to be able to be doing also a multi-turn, multi-step conversation. You need to have more than one back and forth to be able to really judge the personality. You can do some personality judgments on single response, call and response to the AI system. But for the most part, that's easier to do if you're doing multi. And here you might be looking at things like, it's not just black and white, like, is it friendly or not? You might also be looking at, are the answers succinct? Are they to the point? What kind of personality do you want the bot to have, and does it have that personality? Knowledge, this would be how much information does it have accessible. One thing that I find is really great with AI chat systems is your website might be overwhelming if you have more than just a few things. But now that you have an AI system, let's say you have only 6 case studies on your website, you might load 50 into the bot. And so if someone wants to know about their very specific industry combination and your experience, the bot might actually be able to supply additional information that's not directly visible on your website. So, and that's an example of, really testing the knowledge scope of your bot. So how much information are you loading in? And then is it accurately referencing that information in its answers? Again, is it hallucinating? Does it say it doesn't know? So you're going to want to develop tests for your knowledge as well. And then the customer satisfaction I already talked about. Memory, this would be testing on a conversation. If you go, let's say, 5 steps in, and then you refer back to something that was 5 messages ago, does the bot remember what you were talking about, or does it forget? And if it's forgetting, how quick does it forget? Sometimes there's drift, or it forgets after 5 or 10 what that initial conversation was like. Maybe that's unacceptable, so you want to test for that as well. You need to be multi-turn for that, for sure. Awareness, what I mean by this is that the system has an awareness of context. So it could be, what page are you on the website? Or if it's an internal system, who are you in your organization? What is your roles, your knowledge? Who does it know enough about you that it can predict and help anticipate your answers? If you say, how do I onboard a customer? Your internal AI agent knows if you're a developer asking this question, or if you're a project manager, or if you're an office manager, right? Because you want a very different answer based on who's asking. So this awareness is like context awareness. Security, it is possible to jailbreak or hack or disrupt AI systems. Is your system vulnerable to it? Are the known vulnerabilities of the model that you're using exposed, or have you patched them? What model you're using? Things like that. Very important to also check. And then again, these guardrails can also apply to security, same, in terms of dev fixes. Compliance, these would be regulations like the EU AI Act, so you can run tests on that. Performance, this would be things more related to speed of the output. There is a security concern with performance. Can you do a denial of service attack on your bot? Meaning, can I initiate 5,000 conversations with your bot and either take it down or cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars of AI fees by just constantly hitting your AI. That would be a type of DOS attack. Are you vulnerable to that? And then the last one I have on here, and not, and this list is not necessarily extensive, like there might be more categories, but the last one I'm going to talk about, which can be very important as well, is bias, right? So is your AI system bias? You would want to develop tests for what kind of bias you're trying to check for. And that could be anything. Could be, when if the bot gives an example, does it always cite men or women, or is it always citing, one group of people versus another? Whatever the bias is that you're interested in, you can also check for that. Okay, so with those things in mind, you're going to want to group all of your multi-turn tests, and then you're going to have your single turn tests as well as kind of two big categories. In order to generate your tests, things you can do, you can scrape information from a website, but you can also load in information from documents that you might have, specifications. It could be 2000 standard operating procedure documents or flowcharts or whatever it is you have within your organization. If this is an internal AI agent, it's essentially whatever you're using to train your bot would be the same information that you're using to build the tests, really. And then this last one here, this is supposed to be a little scales here for legal. So if you have legal agreements, it's also documents, but people sometimes forget about this. If the bot has any kind of legal risks you want to check for, you need to remember to not just load in the knowledge and test the knowledge, but you also want to load in the legal boundaries and check for that. And you're probably going to want to synthesize or create some additional documentation, which could be specifically, it's going to be for controlling the bot and for testing. And that could be things related to topic boundaries, things you're not allowed to talk about, right? Like a lot of this is the things you should be talking about, right? These are the equals. But you also want to have a document, at least one, that your AI knows, which is the things that you should not be talking about, right? You want to create those boundaries as well. So you have to have negatives and positives to have a good AI system. Now, in terms of the product owner and what they're doing, so in addition to building the knowledge and all of these tests, you also want, it's pretty common right now, I'm seeing everywhere, that the standard is you should be doing some evaluations of your AI system, and you want to be doing a combination of automated AI testing and, disclaimer, I have a business I've co-founded called TestFox, which does just that. But if you're got a hardcore team that wants to code your own automated eval, you can do that, of course, but we have a tool that just does it for you. And then you probably also want to be doing some human manual evaluations. That's essentially just looking at approximately about 100 conversations that are multi-turn, and then categorizing, making comments on each of them to annotate what could be better in that conversation, trying to pick out the first biggest problem you're seeing. And then as you start seeing the collection of problems that you're finding from these hundreds, you can then process those 100 to find what are the main themes, and then generate new tests as well as fixes, right? So your developer can fix these, you develop new tests, and then these new tests feed into new multi-turn and new single-turn tests to make sure that you did successfully fix the issue. All right, so as you get the system getting ready, if you're in these, that should not say post-launch, that should say pre-launch. So if you're in the pre-launch phase, right? So you haven't launched your AI system yet, you might be seeing at first that you've got a bunch of problems. So most things are failing, a few tests are passing, let's say it starts like that. And then as you keep fixing and rerunning tests, your amount of errors, your percentage of errors will keep going down, but your percentage of fixes will keep going up, right? So you've got a burn down chart or burn up of your successes. And then once you get to a certain point, you're going to agree that you're ready to launch, right? This approval step here, you're going to want to approve that you're ready to launch. And I've seen and found that really you want to categorize. There's different ways you can categorize it or different levels of granularity. But in essence, if we were to fundamentally break it down, you're going to have at least two risk categories. You're going to have your high risks or critical, right, over here. And you're going to have your low risks here. So at a minimum, you have these two. The medium is not even essential. And what you might say is launch, we have to fix 100% of high and as many lows as possible, right? If you have medium, then you have to have some kind of an understanding of what does this mean. It could be we're going to fix the high issues first, then make sure those are gone as fast as possible because they're blocking maybe further testing. And then we're going to also fix all medium before we launch, pending per test overrule. And then low issues we're going to fix after launch, right? That could be how you classify it. Now, this list we have over here with these areas to validate, these categories, these essentially can be abstracted and mapped into different top level categories. So you might say, okay, we're going to group a whole bunch of our tests under legal and liability. We're going to a group of tests under compliance. We're going to adherence. This would be topic adherence, right? Making sure things don't go outside of topic domain. And then knowledge, we're going to have maybe a ton of tests here. And then goals, we might not have as many tests here, but they're more important because they're the whole flow that you're following. And then of these tests, right, you're going to have maybe a lot of these legal liability tests are high. Compliance might be high. Adherence, you might have some highs and some mediums and maybe a couple lows. And knowledge, you're probably going to have a bunch of lows, mediums, and high. And goals, you might have a mix in here, or it might be a lot of high issues, whatever it might be. So what you might decide as well is you might say, okay, in my legal liability, I want 100% of these to pass. I don't even care if it's what risk level it is between high, medium, and low. Compliance, maybe you want 100% as well. Maybe for your adherence, here you say high and medium. Right? Maybe in knowledge, you say, maybe you say only high. I don't know, probably medium as well. And then in goals, maybe here you say, whatever it might be, but it could be all of them. Let's say you decide all. What I'm trying to show here is that this mapping can become more interesting as you start combining the two dimensions together, the priority or risk level of the test and the category together. You can get this mapping of what does your approval target look like for your release. And then once you do release, then you're moving into observability or your post-launch, right? So at this point, you're going to want to think about what are your alerts? How are you analyzing the AI system? What kind of continuous evaluation are you doing? Which also includes, system improvements, right? From that. Improvements is a long word, so I'll have to type it out. And then, how are you tracking metrics in terms of performance, ROI, and so forth? So once you have launched, you need to be thinking about 3 categories. And this could be an existing system that's already launched and you're doing testing post-mortem, right? So you've already launched, maybe, and now you want to go in and check how well is your system doing. You have a live system. So the kinds of tests that I recommend that you do, the first one is scheduled. So you might say, depends on your business. This could be daily or it could be weekly. Maybe you've got a very small business and you want to just run them monthly. And then what kind of tests are you running here, right? That would be a subset of your tests, probably. Could be all of them, but maybe you're going to just run your high tests. Maybe you're going to run high and medium, right? Or maybe it's based on a category. Maybe you want to check the latest jailbreaking attacks that have been released this month on security, right? So you want to subscribe or keep up to date on the latest tests in that category and make sure that you're testing for those. Whatever this package is, and you could have different schedules for different kinds of tests, like maybe this one you're running daily, right? Or you're running on an as needed, meaning as soon as there's an update to any of the security or jailbreak tests that are out there in the public domain, you want to run them right away to see if your bot is vulnerable to that. But otherwise, maybe your high tests, just your general high ones, maybe you're testing them weekly or something like that, right? And so you could then do your high and medium maybe every 2 weeks or every month. Maybe every month you test all the lows. I don't know, whatever that is. So you have scheduled tests to make sure that the system is still staying current, up to good, up to par. And then the observing, so you've got 2 kinds of things going on. You've got the log, which is kind of things that have already happened. So completed conversations. And then you have real-time observation that you can also do. So they're kind of the same, but real time versus in a log, it just depends on the kinds of things you're checking for. In both of these categories, you can have AI evaluating the conversations, and you can have a human being also evaluating conversations. When you have a human being observing these conversations, it's very similar to this process over here. So you still have your product ownership who's evaluating. Maybe you're not evaluating 100, or maybe you are because it's once a month and there's 1,000 conversations in there. So you pick the first 100 and you go through them. If you want, especially in the beginning, really high critical bot, you want to make sure that for the first couple months, you're really checking it. So, that might give you some results. You might see some new problems, new tests, new development needs to be done to fix those. And then a new kind of mini update needs to be done. But you can also do AI evaluations of the conversation. You could check for things like frustration, right? You could check for things like questions that have no answer, right? So how many times did your bot say, I don't know the answer to a question? And did it happen more than once? And if it did, you want to flag this one, right? So we want a human to see that something's being asked. People keep coming to your website and they keep asking about blue bicycles, right? Where can I buy the blue bicycle? And the bot says, I don't know what a blue bicycle is. We don't sell blue bicycles. So that would be something you'd want to know. Why are people asking for this thing that isn't there? Frustration just in general, right? What is the sentiment of people? So you can have an AI system easily check 1,000 conversations and then summarize for you in that log review if there is overall sentiment of frustration increasing or decreasing compared to the previous period, or what is the percentage of frustration that you're seeing in that period that you're measuring. Is it 2%, right? Or is it 20%, right? You probably don't want 20% frustration. And then if this is a system that was helping to augment your existing support team, is the new system with this AI doing better or worse than it used to, right? That's a very important question. But you can also check things like goals completion, right? How many people completed these goals? And if you've already mapped these goals out here in the beginning, where we're talking about these multi-step goals, and you already have them as these multi-turn steps, right? So you have your goals being gone through and you're checking that they're completed. You have all those tests done. You can then just watch the logs and see that people are doing it. Real time, this would be if you need any kind of alerts that are happening in real time to problems that are occurring in the system and you want to get notifications of things. Maybe it's the chat time is really slow all of a sudden. It's taking 22 seconds for the AI to respond to every single chat, right? So if you have anything that's in that category, you want to get an immediate notification. Okay, I think that's already a lot of information. I'm trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you'd like me to go deeper into. I hope you found this useful. And yeah, as always, I love the feedback. All right, take care. Bye-bye.